Hi guys, my name is V and welcome to my book nook. So I'm a mood reader, right? And sometimes it means I need a book that's going to make me cry. So I have curated a list of books that are sure to pull on your heartstrings. So get comfortable, grab a cup of coffee, maybe a box of tissues, and let's get started. So first up, I'm going to talk about some young adult books. So the first book is You've Reached Sam. This is a romance book with some magical realism. Basically, we're following 17-year-old Julie, who has her whole life planned out. She wants to leave her small town. Her boyfriend and her are going to move to college together, and she has everything planned out when suddenly Sam dies. Julie doesn't know how to deal with this. She doesn't know how to handle her grief. She skips his funeral and she just really doesn't know how to process this when she phones Sam. So she just wants to cling on to anything that she can that's left of him, and she just wants to hear his voice one more time. But Sam picks up the phone. This is just a beautiful story of Julie getting a second chance at saying goodbye and learning and trying to let go of Sam. And it just handled grief so beautifully, and this book will be sure to make you cry for sure. Then the next book that I want to recommend is 1,000 Boy Kisses by Tillie. This book is a tearjerker. It is so heartbreaking and so heartfelt. You follow Poppy and Rune, who basically met when they were kids. They had this beautiful friendship when they were growing up that blossomed into their first love when they were teenagers. They were inseparable and they had this really special connection when Rune has to move away back to Norway. And all of a sudden, while he's moved away, Poppy just cuts him off with no explanation. And Rune is like, this is the most heartbreaking thing that's happened to him. How is he going to recover from this? And I think 2 years later, he moves back next door to Poppy and he finds out the real reason that she cut him off. And this is the start of true heartbreak for him. And it just follows their journey, and it's just such a beautiful story. It's honestly one of the saddest books I've read, and it's just so beautifully done. So sometimes I find that fantasy books deal with a little heavier topics, especially since they have a lot more character deaths, which brings me to my next recommendation. I feel like fantasy books sometimes have this real power over you because you form such powerful connections with the characters, because with fantasy books there's so much of effort put into making this world feel real, which makes the characters feel sometimes more real than you anticipated. So the next recommendation I have is Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. It's just the first book that I'm recommending you because I felt like this book dealt with so many powerful topics, especially grief and how messy that process is, how powerful friendships are, and I thought it was just very beautifully done. This book genuinely made me cry, especially with the ending. The last, I'd say 200 pages were just so sad. You just felt all the emotions. You were just really going through it. Basically, this book, we're following Bryce, who is this kind of party girl. She has this really close-knit group of friends. This is set in an urban fantasy world, and one day Bryce's friends are all murdered by a demon, and her whole world is turned upside down. She does not know what to do. We follow her a little while later. She and this other guy, Hunt, who is an angel, basically her assigned bodyguard, have teamed up and they have to solve the murders that happened all that time ago because they have suddenly started reoccurring. This demon has come again and is murdering people again. And Bryce finds herself at the center of this investigation, trying to figure out what's happened, still trying to deal with the loss of her friends from before. And it's just, I thought, a very beautiful book. The world building in the first 200 pages is really heavy, so just go into it knowing that. But I think it's just really worth your time. The next book that I want to recommend is Bonemeal for Roses. So this is a local book. It follows this girl, Poppy, who basically was abused by her mother when she was really young, and her grandparents took her in when she was about 6. She grew up on their farm and she tried to deal with all the things that happened to her when one day she starts this love affair with a much older man, and the story kind of goes from there. It's a very emotional book. It's very beautiful and I just highly recommend it. I also think it's so lovely that it's set in South Africa. The next book up on my list is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. So this book follows Macy, who is a pediatric resident. She is engaged, she is very hardworking, her life revolves around this. And one day she runs into Elliot, who was her first love, probably the love of her life, and it really brings up memories from then. So it's a dual timeline, so we're following Macy and Elliot now, and then we also get to experience what it was like for them to meet each other, to be childhood friends, to really grow together, to watch each other grow up, to fall in love. And then we find out that all of a sudden Macy cut Elliot off, and we're trying to figure out, what really happened that one night, why did they stop talking, and it was just such a tragic story and it's very beautiful. It will pull on your heartstrings and I just highly recommend this one. The next book I want to talk about is We Are All Equally Far From Love. This book is set in Palestine and we follow a really large cast of characters. It's several short stories combined and each story is very heartbreaking. It deals with a lot of loneliness and the characters are very loosely connected. They don't all get happy endings or conclusive endings. They're very loosely connected, right? So the first story, you start off with this lady who is writing letters to someone and she's slowly falling in love with him. And then the next story is about the girl in the post office and she finds these letters. So that's kind of how they segue into each other. But it was just very beautifully written. It's very sad. So you have to really be in the mood to read a book like this. But it is just so worth your time and I would highly recommend this book. Then the next short story that I want to recommend is White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This book is really short, right? But it still packs a punch. It is the story of unrequited love. We are following these two people who meet each other over this course of I think 4 or 5 nights and they get to know each other through these really beautiful conversations. They form a friendship and they find such bliss and safety within each other. It's kind of like you fell in love with the idea of someone more than themselves and it's doomed for tragedy. And it really deals with the topic of how love is fleeting, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you got to experience it even if it doesn't last forever. And I thought this was just such a beautiful book that just really resonated with me, and I read this so long ago and it just stuck with me. Some honorable mentions are The Song of Achilles, Reminders of Him, and Just for the Summer. These books were sad and emotional, but personally they didn't really make me cry. They weren't that sad books, but they were still very emotional books that if you're in the mood, just check them out. The Song of Achilles is set in Greece. You follow Achilles and you follow this prince who was shamed and how they grow up together and form this really special bond. And it's a very beautiful book, very poetic. Just for the Summer, I spoke about this in my best books of 2024. This book follows Emma and Justin who meet through this Reddit thread, and again they're going through a lot of stuff in their personal lives and how they fall in love basically. And then Reminders of Him follows Kenna, who was in prison and she has a child and basically her struggles with that, to just briefly sum those books up. So those are all the books that I have to recommend for you guys that are sure to make you cry, pull on your heartstrings, and really they're all such good, beautiful books. And I hope that you find something that you like. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you liked today's video. Comment down below if you've read any of these books, or comment any books that have made you cry, and I will see you guys next week.